They give the contestant a head start, and then watch this guy in the freeze suit.
This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Watch this, folks.
I mean, the guy had what, a 200-foot head start?
At least.
Look at this guy go.
This guy is beautiful. Look at this guy.
The guy thought, he thought he was going to win.
Exactly.
Yes guys, welcome back to Blue Bloods Football with your host Hamlet. Apologies for not posting the past few weeks. I've been extremely busy, guys. Life has been full of its ups and downs, but we keep moving. But for the meantime, enjoy the previous videos, enjoy the previous shorts, leave a like, comment and subscribe, and let me know what you think of the videos. I like to interact with people, and check the details in the description box for other social media such as TikTok. So let's get on with it. We're here to speak about Arsenal today, guys, and I'm here to ask the question, have Arsenal missed their chance? It seems to be the resounding consensus now, given the events of City beating Arsenal on the Wednesday night. I was there to watch that match. That was, that was horrific. I mean, everyone pretty much kind of predicted that City was going to win. Obviously Arsenal still had some hope or whatever. We're in a situation now where the title charge is out of Arsenal's hands. The current standing is that City have 2 games in hand and they are 2 points away from Arsenal. So I don't think it's completely over yet statistically, but everyone's like, it's done. But I'm just here to talk about the events of this season, how this season has been so far, for Arsenal at least. I was looking at Arsenal, where did it go wrong? Because these guys were on fire, they were leading the charge very well. I think right now what has happened is that they're the first team in history to lose this much of a lead from being on top for so long. They had a 10 or 8 or 10 point gap in the league for so long, and it just dropped all of a sudden. So I think there are multiple factors that have contributed to this. I personally don't watch Arsenal every day, so obviously an Arsenal fan will have a better perspective, but from my perspective, it seems like at some point the downhill started from Everton and Sean Dyche. No, I'm kidding, but it seems like from what I've seen, Arsenal squad are showing their somewhat inexperience when it comes to challenging for such big honors, you know what I mean? They're developing a standard and have done really well this season and improved dramatically from last season and previous seasons. I'm guessing this was the foundation. The previous season was the foundation they're building for this season and why they're doing so well. But the thing is, they are a young squad and it is showing. Obviously, there are benefits to having a young squad and there are disadvantages. Disadvantages is moments like this where you need characters to step up and maintain a cool head. Staying at the top is one of the most difficult things. Fighting for the top is a lot easier than staying at the top, in my opinion. You got a goal to get towards, you got someone you need to better. In the case of staying at the top, you're fighting off multiple people. You got to maintain a certain standard and you got to uphold your standard, not the other person. Sometimes it helps to have competition push you, but at the end of the day, it starts with you internally, and that's where inexperience is a liability in such a course. So it seemed as if, especially after Arsenal got knocked out of Europa, they just led a bunch of random bad results. These guys were conceding goals. Funny enough, they conceded slightly more goals than Chelsea or slightly less, but in terms of conceding goals, we're actually not that far. And look at how terrible Chelsea is, which goes to show Chelsea's issue in terms of scoring goals, which, we're not surprised at, but they just drew 3 games. I think it was against West Ham, it was against Southampton in such an awkward way, conceding 2 fast goals, almost losing that game, and I can't remember the other team, and then they go and lose to City. So obviously this was in their heads. I was hearing a bunch of things before about how the Arsenal players for the first time were actually talking about City's form, but before they were focused on themselves, and it's all the pressure that they obviously seem to have struggle handling. A lot of people are talking about Arsenal gonna bottle it, etc, etc. A lot of fans are hoping for that to happen. Low key, I was getting abuse from Arsenal fans and I was hoping for it to happen, but I still respect them for what they have done thus far. to be honest. City pretty much dominated them in both games. The first game was a lot closer than this one, to be honest. This game was just, it was a shutout. Like, they dominated them, they looked more hungry. City, Arsenal looked shaky. Like, you could see what was in their minds. You could see people were timid. And that's the thing with team sports like football. When it's a couple of people that are timid, a few, it could really spoil the whole team. And you can see it shows. Like, reaction time is slower, they overthink passes. Trapping is just not the same, the confidence isn't there, and that's one of the things that I admired about Arsenal going forward when they were leading the title charge. They seemed to be like at a point where they didn't care what they did. It's because they had lost so much previously, you know what I mean? The previous seasons they've been humiliated, so they're like, let's just do as much as we can now, you know what I mean? Well, yes, they drew against Liverpool, that was the other game, but that Liverpool game is what I want to reference, in that the way they started that game was really good, despite conceding later on, which was bad. They played with so much confidence at Anfield, like they were at the training ground. I'm like, that's what you need. You need to pass out the back. You need to not put pressure on yourself by hoofing it up when, you know, Liverpool's pulling that Anfield press. You need to calm it down. That's what you need to do. And they had that bravery, because when it comes to certain things you mention, you hear that Pep and Arteta constantly mention in the dressing room, you need to be brave. You need to take accountability, take responsibility, understand that you're going to mess up at some point, and then just cover for it. Those are the kinds of players and teams that win leagues, you know what I mean? And Arsenal seem to have that in abundance, but they got timid at some point, especially when they started dropping points and results weren't going their way. So yeah, I think that's part of where it went wrong. What I also want to look at is City's resurgence, guys. City didn't start the league very well, to be honest. They were stumbling across a few results. They had great results and not so good results. I made a video on Haaland himself, and he's a massive factor in City's title charge. And when he came in, I asked the question as to whether or not he actually improving City or not. And there were lots of videos as well showing that he's made City more of a different team, in that they never really played with a traditional striker, and how City is trying to mold to Haaland in order to prioritize getting the goals. But now the interesting thing is that in City's form, what I've noticed is that Haaland is now molding to City in a short amount of time, which I'm very impressed about, and I have to acknowledge that, because when Haaland came to the Premier League, my worries was that I knew he was going to do well, but I thought it was going to take a lot of time for him to adjust to City. I thought that's what was going to happen, because Pep doesn't seem like the type of manager and coach to be like, let's all play around one player kind of thing, unless they're exceptional like Messi. But Haaland is exceptional, obviously, but in his own way. But he didn't seem like the type who was doing that. And it looked like he was trying to fit Haaland's mold of play. They were trying to get the ball to Haaland. Everything was direct and to him for the final product. And a lot of the time, it became very telegraphed and obvious. When they shut Haaland out, he was doing nothing in the game. No assists, very little touches. If he wasn't scoring, he wasn't doing anything. Now, the case is changing, where Haaland is successfully and low-key, like Thierry Henry even mentioned, molding to City's way of play, because he mentioned the same thing I did. Haaland wasn't really in the same tangent with City. It was like more direct. It was like pass to Haaland, running through on goal. He didn't know how to do that, but he's developing this maturity in his play, and it's showing within such a short amount of time. This guy is really, I'm just blown away by him, and he's still maintaining that goal scoring form and hunger at the same time. So that's definitely, I think, the biggest factor in City's resurgence and how well they're doing. That Haaland's molding to the team, and him and Kevin De Bruyne happen to switch roles. Like, geez, guys, long hair don't care, and then he ends up scoring in the end and getting his goal. This guy is something else. This is why I really wanted him for Chelsea before Lukaku, to be honest. He's remarkable, and the fact that he's shown the capabilities to grow and change the way he plays, that's one of the biggest things for me when it comes to players, because it's easy to stay naturally where you are and do what you used to all the time, even if it's at a high level. But to mold the way you play and change it and, like, you know, conform to certain other things and understand that different situations require different patterns of play and forms of play, and you start to change the way you play, that is one of the most admirable things for me to do, because you're going against what you're naturally used to. The fact that he's trained himself to change is just, I'll always admire that above most things when it comes to football. Ask the question now for Arsenal, is it over? Personally, there are positives that I have to mention about Arsenal. Like I said, their title charge has been amazing. They've been quite resilient the majority of the season. They have made Champions League officially, so congrats to them about that. Obviously, it's going to be a massive disappointment to them. They don't win the league, given how far they've come. It's like they had the hope and it dropped. And it's crazy because, like I said, they pretty much the only team in history to bottle this much of a lead. So, and if you picked any team in the top 6 to do that, I'm sorry, it would likely be between Arsenal and Tottenham, to be honest. I wouldn't think they'll get this close to the title in the first place, though, to be honest, but they did. And now it's not really looking good, to be honest. I don't know how Arsenal fans feel. They must be gutted to, at some point, be faced with the possibility of winning as many trophies this season as Chelsea and Tottenham, despite such good play. Wow. But yeah, there's always next season, which is also another thing I wanted to speak about, because if we focus on the future for now, a lot of people are also mentioning that this might be Arsenal's biggest chance, and the title of this video as well as that I mentioned either in the caption or wherever, that they have missed their chance, I feel, because this was the best time for them to win it. Why? Because this was a season of the underdog. I mentioned this in comparison to an example would be Leicester's title winning season. They had a lot of things that were going in their favour outside of their intrinsic will and determination to win the league. Yes, they played brilliantly, but if we look at that season, a lot of the other teams in the top 6 were doing abysmally, and then the rest of the mid-table teams and relegation scrap teams were pretty much doing as, usual business, trying to survive. But the rest of the teams, such as, Liverpool's and Chelsea was abysmal that season. That was our worst season since this one. Who else? Spurs was quite good. Arsenal came later. United was bad as well. All these teams were quite terrible, and no one really offered that much resistance, giving them more of a clearer path to their title-winning success. Now, if I compare that to Arsenal's season currently, it's a similar case in which a lot of the large teams came to the party late, or haven't even come to a party at all. Like, if you look at the early teams in contention for the title this season, it's predominantly been Arsenal and City. Some people threw Man United in there for a brief period, but now they're just trying to sustain top 4. Liverpool have been completely off. Chelsea have been worse. It's just calamities for those teams, and that's why even right now you see teams like Aston Villa and Brighton, and guys are fighting for Europa League spots and Champions League spots potentially. Newcastle coming up as well. So this season was very unique, and it was it was one of Arsenal's biggest chances for them to actually take the league, which is why it's going to be a lot more difficult in the following seasons. If we look at the fact that, maybe Spurs might make a bit of a comeback, Lord willing Chelsea, United seems like they might be on the up and up, Liverpool might come back, you know what I mean? So it's going to be a lot more competition besides City alone. So this was one of the early times, Arsenal might have had a chance. Plus they have more football next season, the Champions League nights, where they have to really focus on building their squad and sustaining it in terms of getting some form of depth going for them, which is one of their faulting points as well. They did recruit in the summer and the winter, I think, but not their first choice as the majority of the players. And also a lot of the time, a lot of Arsenal fans were telling me about how Arteta's making odd decisions in terms of a starting lineup and making late substitutions. Factors like, starting Fabio Vieira instead of Jorginho and not using Jorginho enough, and times of resting players randomly when they really were needed for games. These small factors determine, are swing factors in terms of whether or not you're going to win a title. And you got to get all these little things in your favor. So it's going to be a lot more difficult for these guys to win it from here on out. I'm sure Arsenal fans are hoping that things can be turned around for them. But yeah, you're going to have to wait and see. Personally, I don't think it's over yet. It's just, it's very difficult for them to do anything at this point. But that's all from me, guys. Hamlet from Blue Bloods Football, signing out.